Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well and hope you all had a great Shabbos. We're going to continue with our learning of Path of the Just, and we are in chapter 2. Before we start, I just want to say that the Am Yisrael lost a giant of a Torah this weekend. Chaim Kanievsky, who was known as the Sar HaTorah, the Prince of Torah. He was one of, if not the greatest Torah scholars on earth. At the age of 94, passed away on Friday, right before Shabbos. So it was very intense. But on Purim in Jerusalem, we got the news. So it was very, very intense. And his funeral just took place a few hours ago. There were a million people there. A million people came to Bnei Brak for his. Absolutely incredible. So when the Jewish people lose somebody of that stature, it's a very big loss, and it's a loss that gets felt. Whether we feel it or not, it's real because he was the amount of Torah that he had and his greatness in being one of the great Jewish leaders and great scholars of the generation is irreplaceable. We don't have even the greatest younger scholars of the generation after him don't come anywhere near his knowledge and greatness of Torah. So it's a big deal. So we should learn for healing Nishmasa, for elevation of his Nisham. Okay, so we are in chapter 2, and we're studying the trait, the quality, the attribute of Zehirut, also known as vigilance. And just a quick summary and a quick review of what we've said up until now about this very important attribute, Zehirut, or living a life, as we call it, the examined life of vigilance means, Ramchal said, there are 5 points to it. It means living a life where we contemplate and monitor our actions and our ways to determine whether they are good or not good. Okay, so contemplating means that we set aside time to think about what we want to do in this world and how we want to do it and what type of people we want to be and what our values are, how we want to live our lives and what sort of legacy we want to live. And we dedicate time, we set aside time for spiritual contemplation. And specifically that's regarding our actions, what we do, the choices that we make, what we do, what we actually choose to do, and our ways. And our ways refers to our midot, our attributes, as well as our outlook in life, the way we perceive the world and the way we are in this world in terms of our perspective, our outlook, our philosophy, our ethical system that we live by. And we have to contemplate and monitor, meaning it's not just enough to set aside time and contemplate and come up with a plan of how we want to be in this world, but we also then have to take it to the next step and have a system for monitoring ourselves and making sure that our actions and our ways are consistent with the vision and the ideal that we have created for ourselves. And ultimately, it's all being weighed against this question of whether our actions and our ways are good. Good we've defined already as being that which brings us closer to Hashem, or whether they are not good, meaning they are bringing us further away from our connection to Hashem. So that's really what this whole idea of Zehirut is, living a life where we're contemplating and monitoring our ways and actions to make sure that they are consistently good and not otherwise. Okay. Now we're going to pick up on page 45 on the top. It says the Ramchal illustrates the danger faced by one who fails to exercise zihirus. Meaning, why is it so important for us to live this way? Why is it so important for us to live the examined life? Why can't we just, be like everybody else? Just be normal people. Why do we have to spend time contemplating and monitoring and our ways and our actions? Why isn't it enough just to live life? Live and let live, enjoy life, try to be a good person, have some morals, some basic morals, and try to live life in a good way, and try to be good people. And why isn't that enough? That's what the Ramchal is addressing over there on page 45 on the top. He says, now, if one travels through his world without considering whether his path is good or bad, meaning he's not living the example life, he's not designating time for contemplation about how he wants to be in this world. He's not carefully monitoring and making a spiritual accounting of his ways and actions consistently to make sure that they are in line with, or in sync with the way he's determined he wants to be in this world. So if he's not doing that, then he's like a blind person walking on the edge of the riverbank, whose peril is surely very great, and whose misfortune is far more likely than his salvation. Now, if you recall, this is not the first time he's used the analogy of a blind person when it comes to failing to live an examined life. Before, he said that a person who doesn't live examined life is like a blind person groping in the dark, meaning they're not only can they not see danger in front of them, but because it's dark, no one else can help them. They're not open to advice. They're not listening. They're not considering what other people have to say. And here again, he uses the analogy of a blind person, but this time he says like a blind person who's walking on the banks of the river. And he says, there's, I guess, a theoretical possibility that blind person could safely, navigate that situation, but his misfortune is much more likely than his salvation, meaning the chances of him falling into that river and perishing are far greater than the blind person surviving a very dangerous journey of walking on the side of the river blind. Okay, this analogy is an accurate one, for truly the lack of watchfulness, whether due to natural blindness or due to willful blindness, meaning opted for blindness, which is the shutting of one's eyes to danger by choice and preference, is one and the same. Thus, one who neglects to open his eyes and contemplate his ways is realistically traveling the hazardous paths of this world in a state of blindness. Okay, and he's introducing us here to this idea of choosing blindness, optional blindness, blindness by choice. So he says that again, the chances of surviving or succeeding in life, and succeeding in life, we're all going to define that differently, but at the same time, we all are going to define it in the same way too, which is living up to the potential that Hashem gave us, moving closer to Hashem in every day of our lives. The chances of being able to do that without zihirus, meaning without the examined life, without contemplating and monitoring our ways and actions, is slim to none. It's about as likely as the blind person successfully traversing the riverbank. Certain dangers in life, right? There are certain dangers that we all face that don't require a lot of contemplation. I don't need to spend time meditating on the fact that if there's a fire in my house, God forbid, I should get out of the house. Or if there's some kind of dangerous something going on around me, a virus or something else, that I have to take precautions. That doesn't require a lot of contemplation. That's obvious. That's sort of an automatic response. But there are other dangers that do need a lot of contemplation before I can understand and truly appreciate the danger involved. Okay. we all can relate to that, because there's things that we like to eat very much, but we're being told that they're not good for us. So what do? I just found out I have a diet coach or a dietitian coach or whatever, and she told me that Israel has classified cold cuts as a class A carcinogen. She said there's only two other things that are on the list of class A carcinogens: cigarette smoking and asbestos. Oh, cold cuts. Okay, so
only processed cold cuts.
Processed cold cuts, but
Yeah,
the cold cuts that you get in the store.
Yeah, but there's an option. There's an option. You can get it, sliced right from the cold cut. I mean, the piece of meat. David, why doesn't the Ramchal use the analogy of a blind man without a torch by the river?
Well, he's already used that analogy. He's already used the analogy of a blind person in the dark.
Yeah, well, but that's an even stronger analogy than just walking by the riverbed, because nobody can see him.
Right, but I'm saying he already referred to a person who's not living the examined life is like a blind person walking in the dark without a torch. Now he's adding to it that it's not only is he like he's walking in the dark, but he's walking in the dark by the riverbank, which means his chances of survival are even less.
So which one is worse, walking by the riverbed or walking at night without a torch, or are they about the same?
Depends where he's walking. If he's walking on a big grass field at night without a torch, it's maybe not so dangerous. But walking on a highway or walking certainly on the riverbed is very, very dangerous. So this is an idea that he's introducing us to, I believe. And the idea here is blindness by choice. Okay, choosing blindness, meaning I can close my eyes and choose, if I want to, not to see the pitfall right in front of me. There's some kind of danger that lurks right in front of me, and it's right there, and it's real, and it exists. But I have a choice of whether I want to see it and respond to it and take necessary precautions, or whether I want to just close my eyes and pretend it's not there and walk straight right into it. Okay, now closing my eyes, let's take the example of walking along the river or walking somewhere where there's uneven ground, where there's a possibility of falling. Okay, just closing my eyes and pretending that it's not there, that the danger is not there, is not going to make it go away. Like the little babies, little kids, the way they deal with things that are scary is they close their eyes. When you close your eyes, it's not there, but it is there. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. The danger is there. So we know not to do that in life, in real life, when it comes to protecting ourselves. We know that if we just close our eyes and pretend the danger is not there, it's not going to go away. So the same thing is true, the Ramchal is telling us here, the same thing is true when it comes to spiritual dangers. And this is the point that he's really been making, I think, behind the scenes in this whole chapter, is that spiritual danger is no less real than physical danger. The only difference is that we don't see it. We don't see it with our own two eyes, but it's there. Right? The negative effects of speaking Lashon Hara, for example, are real. They're there. You might not see it and it might not register as real, but it is real. So when it comes to spiritual danger, not knowing that there's a spiritual danger lurking, or knowing that there's a spiritual danger and ignoring it and closing our eyes doesn't make it go away. What the Ramchal is trying to tell us of it. Okay, and what he's really trying to drive home to us is this, and emphasize to us, is that spiritual reality is reality. And just because we can't see it or touch it or connect to it with our five senses doesn't mean it's not real. There are real negative damaging effects of the negative choices and actions that we do in our lives. So the problem is that we all, this is a challenge for all of us. It's a huge challenge for all of us, because, the Torah really, let's be honest for a minute over here, the Torah places uncomfortable demands on us. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you are in your journey, or what stage you are in your journey and your spiritual growth. Whatever the next step is that we haven't taken on yet, and there's no such thing as ever getting there, that's the bad news. You never get there. You just make a choice and you move forward and you push the front line forward, your battle line forward, but then there's another choice and there's another challenge. So this is a reality for all of us, everybody. But the reality is that there are uncomfortable demands that the Torah places on us. Okay. And we don't want to give up certain things in our lives, because we're afraid of what's going to happen if we give them up. We're afraid of the unknown, or it takes us to a place that we're not comfortable with, or it means that we're going to have to deal with a set of uncomfortable consequences from certain choices that we have to make. So what do we do? How do we deal with it? So one of the things that we tend to do, all of us, every one of us, no exceptions, is we choose blindness. What we do is we pretend that those things aren't really such a big deal, right? We pretend that they're not such a big deal. God doesn't really care, or look how much I'm already doing, or look how much I've already done, look how much I've already accomplished, or my favorite one, I'm not Orthodox, so I don't have to do those things, or whatever it is. But the reality is that we come up with ways of closing our eyes and choosing blindness that present dissonance for us, and that create an uncomfortable reality for us. But we would never do this, or at least most of us would not do it when it comes to our physical health. I see Dr. Frank is on the line here. I can't see you, but I know you're there. So imagine, right, if somebody, if Jerry gives somebody a diagnosis of, let's say, picking something random that has no relevance to me, being pre-diabetic. Okay, so let's say Jerry gives somebody a diagnosis that they're pre-diabetic. Okay, so now I have this diagnosis. I'm pre-diabetic. Your doctor says basically, your sugar levels are high. If you don't do something about it, if you don't change the way you eat and start getting more exercise, then, in a matter of time, might be a year, might be 3 years, might be 10 years, but you're going to be diabetic and you're going to be, taking insulin every day. So you get such a diagnosis like this, and, and then you think about it and like, I don't know what to do, because I really like to, eat my rugelach, and I actually don't really enjoy exercise, and I want to be able to, I don't like whole wheat, whole grain, sourdough bread. I like my wife's challah, and I don't want to change the way I eat and change the way I exercise. So we think about it, and then all of a sudden I come up with a solution. Okay. By the way, this is autobiographical. I come up with a solution. Ready for this? It's brilliant. This is really absolutely brilliant. I've solved the problem. I'm going to pretend that I never got the diagnosis. That's it. I'm just going to pretend that it never happened. I never went to the doctor. He never told me I was pre-diabetic. Perfect solution. And I'll just keep on going the way I want to go. Right? And we might do that, but most of us wouldn't. Most of us at least are going to try to make some lifestyle changes in the way we eat, even if it's minor or minimal, or the way we exercise, because we know that there's a physical reality. If my blood test shows, what's that blood test called? A1C or something?
A1C.
A1C, the glucose. If it shows that I'm 5.8, then, that's real. That's real. Now, if I just pretend it's not real, then it's not going to make it go away. It's a real danger. So if what am I going to do if I'm smart and I don't care? I'm going to make some changes. They're not pleasant changes, because I like to eat what I like to eat and I don't like to exercise, but I'm going to make the changes. Okay. So what the Ramchal is telling us over here is that halacha is no less real than pre-diabetic diagnosis. Okay, there's no less real. The physical reality is not more real than the spiritual reality. The difference is that the physical reality, I can take a blood test and I can measure, and it's measurable with the technology that we have. And we don't yet have technology to measure the spiritual reality. But the Ramchal is trying to tell us that spiritual reality is reality, and they're both 100% real, and they both will produce inconvenient consequences. And now my job is to use my free will and to choose how am I going to deal with those inconvenient consequences. So I wanted to take a little pause over here and just open up the microphone for a few minutes and see if anybody can share with us an example that, based on what I'm saying, something that can resonate with them, not the physical part, the spiritual part, and maybe and how you might deal with it or grapple with it, or that handling that challenge.
Yes. David?
Yeah, Jeffrey.
First of all, if you really want to deny something, don't tell your wife. Then you can really deny it. If you tell someone who cares about you, they're going to hock you a chinik, and you're not going to be able to pull it off. The total denial.
So I'd like to take that very, very important point that you just made and flip it around and say, if you get let's say a diagnosis, let's talk in the spiritual sense. Let's say there's something that you need to work on,
right,
spiritually.
Right.
You need to work on and be more careful with lashon hara, or maybe what you're eating or whatever. Then I would say, do tell your wife,
right,
or do tell somebody else who's gonna hock you a chinik,
right,
and hold you accountable and make you responsible. So that's a very, very, very good point. If there's something that's really important to you, that you really want to work on and grow in a certain area and change about yourself, the best thing you could do is tell somebody who does care about you, not so that they won't let you off the hook.
And the other point is that denial is a real defense mechanism that's going to operate throughout life. So in other words, you get in your car, you haven't changed the oil in 10,000 miles, your tires are almost bald, the weather is not so good, but you've got to get to your kid's ball game. You're going to get in the car and you're going to say, what's the chances of me getting in an accident? I'm a good driver. I haven't had anything to drink. Your chances are probably pretty high, but you take it. You deny it because it's something that you want. The same thing happens in the spiritual realm. And this is one that I use. I'm as observant as this one or that one. I do a lot of mitzvahs, and sort of comparing to other people rather than comparing to your potential is a great rationalization for not doing what you could.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And comparing to other people, and we compare ourselves to the people that we're doing more than.
Absolutely.
We call them mashegets, because I'm doing way more than they're doing,
And I'm not vegan.
What about comparing ourselves to the person that's doing a little more than we're doing?
Those people are overzealous. This is what my mother-in-law said. If you do more than me, you're crazy. If you do less, you're a goy. And that's the end of it.
Exactly. That's it. Okay. Anyone else have anything you want to add to this part of this discussion? Okay. Fine. So let's move on. So really, in a sense, we talk a lot about free will, and it's always something that comes up. And really, if you think about it in the truest sense, this is really what free will is. This is free will. Hashem specifically leaves it open to you. You can choose, and it's different. Like when it comes to like physical illness, you don't really. I guess technically you still have free will. I could choose to continue eating whatever I want to eat and not exercising, but it's not such free will, because I also, if I want to live and be healthy, then I know I can't do that. But when it comes to spiritual reality, Hashem doesn't make the spiritual reality feel so real to us. He hides the effects, so we don't see it. It happens, in a way that we can't perceive. So therefore, if it leaves itself wide open to free will. I have to choose. Is this real to me? Do I believe that this is real? And if it's real, do I believe that my actions have positive and negative effects on my soul and on the world and in general? And if so, am I going to make certain choices and difficult choices and face inconvenient and uncomfortable consequences? Or am I going to choose to pretend that they're not there because it's easier? But that's really, in a sense, that from a Jewish point of view, that's really the very essence of what free will is all about. Notice, by the way, that he said, I'll read this again, that when you're walking along the river bank and the blind person is walking along the river bank, he or she is far more likely to experience misfortune, which means drowning in the river or whatever, then they are likely to be saved. Okay, so it's not a 50-50. It's not a 50-50. And that's because as we've discussed earlier, the default, we all have a default position. When you have a computer, you choose your default printer, you choose your default browser. It's the one that automatically opens unless we do something about it. So we all have a default reality. Our default reality is we will always go after the pleasures of the body, comfort and ease. Living a committed life and a life that's committed to protecting the health of my neshama is the opposite of my default position. That is what requires effort, work, commitment, challenge, perseverance, consistency. Okay? And that's what requires me to give up certain things that I don't want to give up. It means that I can't do certain things I want to do, or that I have to do certain things that I want to do. That's the reason why, if we're not living the examined life, the chances of us falling into the river are much greater than successfully navigating the riverbed in blindness. Because we're programmed the way we automatically, our default will always be to go to the physical pleasure because it's much more real and urgent and relevant and present in our lives. So what we all end up doing, again, I am not by any stretch of the imagination excluding myself from this comment that I'm about to make. I'm including myself 100%, and there's no one that's an exception to this rule. And that is what we end up doing is we end up picking and choosing in our Jewish commitments. We all do it. Every one of us, we all do it. We pick certain things that give us meaning and add value and that we want to take on because they enhance our lives. And the things that are not really comfortable for us or that we don't want to do because they're hard or they mean that we have to give up certain things that we don't want to give up. We choose blindness when it comes to those areas of our spiritual life. But the default is that we will always, the physical pleasure of the body, the pleasure of the body will always win unless we make serious, conscious decision to live with Zihirut, to live with a sense of contemplating and monitoring our actions and our ways. Okay, so that's I think is the main focus, really, what he's saying over here.
David?
Yeah.
You got to factor in the Yetzirah too, because
100%.
say that you learn enough to come to feed the eight. So there's something that you want to take a vacation. You really should. You've got obligations, and then you come up with. Didn't Hashem say that you should enjoy the pleasures of life? Isn't there something about when you meet Hashem that's one of the questions you're going to be asked? And what am I going to say that I gave this up because I've got a sick friend? I really should be here. He's got relatives. He's got a son, a daughter. maybe the
Yeah.
higher calling is to enjoy life.
Right, absolutely. Our ability to rationalize is really unlimited. And the Yitzhahara does an incredible job of talking us, out of doing the right thing very, very, very consistently. But I just want to say one more point about this before we read the next paragraph, and that is that there is one major difference. This is the good news. There's a major difference between what we can call physical dangers and spiritual dangers. And that is the difference is the factor that makes the difference is what we refer to as tshuva. Right? You can do tshuva from making a choice that leads to spiritual danger, as opposed to you can't really do tshuva when you make a physical choice. If you decide to walk in the dark without a torch along the riverbank and you fall in, you can't then do tshuva. Sorry, Hashem, I should have taken the torch. I don't know what I was thinking. I regret it. I have a plan not to repeat it again in the future. And I'll verbalize how stupid it was. That's all fine, but there's a physical reality, and that is that you fell in the river, and that you're now in very, you're up the creek, so to speak. But but when it comes to spiritual dangers, we always have the opportunity of tshuva. Meaning, even if we make mistakes and we let ourselves down, or we fail to live up to our expectations for ourselves, or what we've determined the type of person we want to be and the type of things we want to do in our lives and the things we don't want to do, and we fail in the area, we do something, we transgress, we always have the opportunity of tshuva. That's one of Hashem's greatest kindnesses, the greatest chesed that He gives us, is that we can make mistakes spiritually, fix it through the process of tshuva, through contemplating our ways, through feeling regretful for the choices, for what we've done, for making a plan for the future not to do it again, for verbally confessing in front of Hashem what we've done wrong, and if necessary, making appropriate reparations if a third party was involved. All these things are the steps of tshuva that we can do, and that is the important thing to remember, that tshuva is never out of our reach. The opportunity to fix and correct and make right what we've destroyed or broken or damaged is, on a spiritual level, is always available to us. In a physical sense, it's not necessarily available to us. So that's just an important thing to keep in mind. Yeah, Les.
I'm also thinking that while teshuva can disconnect us from accountability for what we've done that we shouldn't have done spiritually, the damage continues. And part of teshuva is the realization that even though we have paid for that indiscretion, the damage lives on. And a normal person would feel some further level of regret in knowing that. I think that's probably a part of teshuva when it's done properly.
Yes, definitely. And but that requires being honest with ourselves, right? And that's the main thing, being real and being honest with ourselves, and being willing to admit when we've made those mistakes, and being kind of real, being real, and not, use Ramchal's analogy, not choosing blindness. And this is such a concept, such a powerful concept of willful blindness. Willful blindness. Choosing blindness because it's pretending that the pit isn't there, because the danger is not there, because we don't want to deal with the inconvenient pressures that it's going to put on our lives to avoid that danger. And I think that is just a you can think about that all week. Willful blindness, and where am I operating with willful blindness in my life, and where can I try to make a little tiny little change somewhere, so that I can give up a little bit of that willful blindness and face a little bit of the uncomfortable reality or consequences that are causing me to close my eyes, willfully close my eyes to some of the spiritual dangers in my life. I think that's a huge, huge, huge idea that we could take away. I just wanted to say one more point over here, and then maybe we'll finish for today. One more paragraph, but a little bit of background for this paragraph. So we're going to see in a minute a quote from the prophet Jeremiah. So we need to understand contextually who Jeremiah was and when he lived and what he was trying to accomplish. So just very, very briefly, Jeremiah was prophesying. He was a Jewish prophet, and he was sent by Hashem as a messenger to prophesy to the Jewish people that of the imminent impending destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the first temple. He lived right towards the end of the period of the first temple, right before it was destroyed. And he was preaching and he was telling people, the Jewish people, guys, we're not doing it right over here. We're making mistakes. We're not living up to our expectations. We're serving idols, and we're involved in immorality and sexual morality and spilling of blood, murder, and all kinds of sins that are taking place. And I'm here to speak on behalf of Hashem to tell you that if we don't change, if we don't fix, if we don't do tshuva, if we don't correct what we need to correct, that we're going to lose everything. We're going to lose our temple. We're going to lose the divine presence. We're going to lose our national homeland. We're going to lose our lives. We're going to be killed. We're going to be sent into exile. We're going to become slaves. And he's out there every day banging on doors and talking in the public square. And what do people do? Choose blindness. I don't hear anything. Do you hear anything? What's going on? Somebody's talking over there, right? And not only do they choose blindness, they actually take Jeremiah and they torture him. They throw him into a cistern, and then they try to put him into jail. They try to sell him into slavery. There's a plot to kill him. That they conspire to kill him. They try to intimidate him, choosing blindness, right? They don't want to deal with what he's saying, because if they accept what he's saying, it means that they're going to have to make really difficult changes. They're going to have to give up their idols. They're going to have to give up their sexual immorality, their practices of sexual immorality. And they don't listen. And what happens? Jerusalem falls. The Babylonians come. King Nebuchadnezzar destroys the temple, murders hundreds of thousands of Jews, sends millions of Jews into exile, and we lose our homeland, and we lose our temple, and we lose the divine presence, because they wouldn't listen to the prophet, because what he was asking them to do was too hard. They chose blindness. So let's see what it says over here in the bottom of page 45. Indeed, the prophet Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, bemoaned the corruption of the people of his generation on account of their being afflicted with the plague of this trait. Why? What does it mean, this trait? Meaning they were not being careful, they were not being vigilant, for they would avert their eyes from their deeds, choosing blindness. They averted their eyes from their deeds without paying attention to examining the nature of those deeds, whether they should be performed or abandoned. Thus Jeremiah said of them, no man relents of his evil, saying, what have I done? They follow their course like a horse racing headlong into war. That is, they raced along on the path of life, following the course of their ingrained habits and ways, without leaving themselves time to scrutinize those habitual deeds and ways. And as a result, they would fall into evil without ever even noticing it. Okay, that's exactly what we're going. It's not a new problem. It's not a problem that was unique to the times of the Ramchal. This is not a problem that's unique to us in our generation, in our times. It's a problem that the Jewish people have always faced. And this is why we continue to fail over and over again in our efforts. It's amazing. We lost the temple. This first temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. the Jewish people go into exile for 70 years. They return miraculously after 70 years and start rebuilding the second temple. And within a few years or less, probably a few months, they're already, and if you read the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah, they're already back to their old ways. The exact same things that they were doing that made them lose the temple in the first place. When they get the temple back, they're back to it right away, almost like it's impossible. But this is us. This is more stiff-necked people, and we continue to refuse to give up on the things that we want individually for what we need to do as a people to get our national act together, so to speak. And I mean, you don't need to look anywhere beyond the news, the Jerusalem Post or whatever. You know, in Israel today, our inability to in 4 elections and you know, endless political infighting. It's a continuous thing that we have to, the challenge that we face as a people. But as individuals, we also have to understand that we have to be real with the choices that we're making. We all have the option of choosing blindness if we want, but we wouldn't do that when it comes to our physical health. And we have to learn to understand that when it comes to our spiritual health, we also need to examine ourselves and figure out, where am I practicing willful blindness? So we can stop here. It's a good place to stop. If there's any question or discussion, happy to engage in that.
David,
Yeah.
did you see the movie Don't Look Up?
No.
It's exactly that. There's a meteor or a comet coming towards the Earth. It's been documented, and the powers that be don't want to believe it. So what they basically said is, don't look up. In other words, close your eyes. Even if the comet's there, you won't see it.
That's it. That's exactly it.
And of course, the comet comes, and then people say, you lied to us. I can see it now. And then what happens to people that told them, do not look up, try to argue that the comet is a good thing because it's going to release all these precious metals that we need, you know, for computer chips and things. But
Sounds
they
like
take
it
off.
sounds like a B movie, but it
Wait. And the people that tell them not to look up take off in a spacecraft and leave everybody.
Is Mean the Merciless in this movie by any chance?
Meryl Streep was in it.
Oh, Meryl Streep.
Yeah, I mean, it was but it's just a perfect thing. In other words, don't look up. You know, we don't believe it. We're not even going to look for it.
So that's my assignment to all of us for the week. Is let's think about it. Let's think about it a little bit about where we're choosing willful blindness, and where we can opt to use our free will to make the difficult choice of opening our eyes to in an area of life where we know we need to face challenges, difficult reality. All right.
We're returning our contract
Where?
this weekend, I think,
Here?
in Israel.
Okay.
So you're going back to normal.
But nothing's changing for them.
Yeah, but they might turn on earlier.
No, their class is at 9:30.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Hello.
My father's. Hey, Dr. Jerry, how are you?
I'm good. Let me give you a couple examples of willful blindness that I see.
Please.
People refuse to get vaccinated.
People who refuse to get vaccinated.
Right, people
Okay.
refusing to get vaccinated, despite all the evidence. People refusing to give up smoking. I mean, these are physical things that they know it's bad, and but they have that willful blindness. None are so blind who will not save those who will not see. So
Wait. Say that again. Say that last part again.
none are so blind, but those who will not see, who refuse to see. In other words,
Right.
just
Right. But I mean, the example of smoking is a little bit of a different one, because there's an there's a quality of addiction over there. I don't think anyone who smokes today will try to tell you that it's not unhealthy to smoke. No, it's all the studies are wrong. It's not true. There's no danger involved in smoking. I mean, I don't think today anyone could say that. They would have to admit that it's very unhealthy and very dangerous, but but they can't quit or whatever.
But somehow they feel that the risks that they'll be exempted from this risk, and
That would be me.
it won't hit them. That's
Won't hit them.
and, and I argue myself blue in the face with these people sometimes, and I get nowhere.
My
But
aunt smoked 2 packs a day of Camel unfiltered cigarettes, and she lived into her late 90s. So maybe it's true.
I think if you give it up, I was a heavy smoker, and I gave it up 50 years ago, and I was really heavy, and so far I'm doing okay.
Thank God.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, right. Well,
Right.
it's a Christian.
But that's the thing. I mean, when it comes to our physical health, people do still choose willful blindness,
Mhm.
but it's more blatantly obvious why that doesn't make any sense. I mean, to ignore a diagnosis, is no one's going to tell you that makes any sense. But we ignore diagnoses all the time. We have 613 diagnoses
Mhm.
in Torah, and we pretend that they're not there because they can be really annoying at times, and cause us to have to make lifestyle changes that we don't want to make. All of us. All right, everybody. I'm sending my father back home tonight. Take good care of him when he gets there. He's a little beat up. I don't know if you heard or not. He had a little bit of a unfortunate accident when he was here, and he's coming back with a broken collarbone and 8 stitches on his head. But
What?
Yeah, but he's pretty tough.
רפואה שלמה, רפואה שלמה.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Hey, Litro.
Okay.
Be well.
Bye, everybody. Be well. See you next week. Have a great week.
Thank you, Rabbi. You too,
Bye-bye.
Rabbi.